Yes, me again, your friend neighborhood DP Brown, writer and creator of The Theme of Thieves. All right, and this is the Comicsburgh show. So welcome, guys. All right. So we're back this week after a couple week, hiatus and everything over Thanksgiving break. So I want to thank you for, checking us out again and everything. Seeing what we got going on as far as Comicsburgh. Make sure that you're following us at Comicsburgh, all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter. Anywhere that you, or on social media, we're at Comicsburgh. So make sure that you're following us. So definitely thank you for checking us out. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure that you hit that, smash that subscribe button. Smash it, smash it, smash it. So hit that subscribe button and hit that notification button. So anytime that we're on, you know that we're on. If you're watching us on, Facebook, thank you as well. Make sure that you, follow us and, share it with your friends and everything. So we like, you're sharing like your, sharing all our stuff and everything, all our work and all the things that we try to do to make it real convenient for you guys to, check us out. So we try to post as often as we can, try to make sure that, you guys are, seeing us and, just making sure that, it's all good for everything that we got going on. Also make sure that you are, hold on, I got to pull up the house cleaning stuff and everything. Oh, we got a podcast too. So yeah, that's, hey, we got a podcast now. So make sure that you follow us on iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're slowly branching out and making sure that, you could listen to us on all our podcast platforms. So slowly branching out, and we basically debut, the podcast every weekend after we debut this episode. It's a holiday season, so you guys got, a lot of stuff going on. So we still want to basically keep it as consistent as possible, with the stuff that we got going on. Of course, support your local library, public library and everything. So make sure that you guys are going to the library, checking out books, reading them. So we always want to make sure that you're doing that. We got so much great stuff, going on Comicsburgh.com. We do have a store on the site. So if you guys didn't already know, we have a store on the Comicsburgh site where you can purchase everything Comicsburgh. So we got like the Theme of Thieves, we got Memoirs of the Morbid, we got The Edge, we got stuff from Page Alfred, Alfred Page and everything. So make sure that you guys are checking that stuff out. Herrenberg's on there, like I said, Theme of Thieves, my stuff and all that. So make sure that you guys are checking that out. Comicsburgh.com. We got all types of stuff, all types of goodies and stuff that you can go onto that website and check us out. All right. All right. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of what we got going on, Comicsburgh today. So this is part 4 of our script to store series. All right. So today we're going to talk about the 3 keys to perfect lettering in comics. All right. So one of the biggest, pet peeves of mine is when, you have like a, if someone's presenting a comic and they want to make it, look as look as good as possible and presentable as possible to a person, but they got like the story, they got like the colors, they got like the inks, they got like the pencils and everything all sewed up and everything all looking good, but they fall when they don't have the proper lettering. Okay, so it's basically like icing on the cake, a good tie to a suit and everything, dresses everything up, makes everything look good, in a comic. So if everything else looks good and great on a comic and then you fall at the lettering, you sort of not take you sort of put yourself in a position to not be taken that seriously, when you're presenting your comics, for the reader, to anybody who's buying it, for anybody who's, just checking out, your stuff and everything. You want to make sure that, it's just all readable and all that stuff. So basically we're going to give you like 3 keys to making sure that you got like good lettering in your comic. And I'm also going to show you a few examples from the Theme of Thieves comic So we can let you know exactly what that looks like and everything. All right. So one of the first things that you want to do, excuse me. Let me pull this up here, guys. I got to get myself together tonight and everything. Oh, script the story. Here we go. So one of the first things you want to do is clarity. Make sure that it's instantly readable. Okay. That's one of the biggest and first things that you need to do when you present your comic. Because no sense in having a comic if it's not going to be read properly. The lettering must be easy to read at a glance. Make sure that you use clean and consistent fonts. With comic stuff, especially, regular comics, you're pretty much using your Comic Sans font, but people can use like different fonts just to convey different stuff based on like the mood of their comic, but you want it, whatever font that you use, you want to make sure that it's instantly readable, and consistently, the clarity is consistent. Avoid using anything over stylized unless it serves a story. Keep the balloon centered with balance and spacing, above and below the letters. Make sure the balloon size fits the words without crowding and leaving any empty spaces and areas, and maintain a strong contrast between the text and the background. The reader should never struggle to understand what's being said. So, I mean, if you're writing a comic and putting a comic out, if your reader is struggling to get from page to page, then your comic is not doing what it's supposed to do. And how do you expect them to go to the next, issue that you put out, if you're consistently doing the same thing? You don't want to overcrowd stuff. So let's go to like an example of what I got. So, so here I got like a page 14 from the first issue of The Theme of Thieves. And basically it's from my, Crazy Man Returns trade paperback, all right, which you could get at comicsburgh.com, and also it'll be in the stores next year. All right. So we get like the close-up of Rebecca, and Rebecca's thought caption, "I miss you, Mom." And then a TV news anchor comes in the world news, a novel virus in South Korea spreading, in small sections. The second panel basically, gets into her and her dad. So you got the panel description right there on the script, and then you got like basically the dialogue that goes with the script and everything. So this is what it looks like without like the the words and everything. So she basically is she basically picks up a picture of her mother's photo and looks at it. So we see that in the panel, and she's looking at her mom, and then she's going down to the store with down the stairs with her dad, to see her dad and everything. So let's see how this looks with the added dialogue text to it. All right, bam, there you go. You see the added dialogue text. "I miss you, Mom," and then in world news, a novel virus in South Korea spreading in small sections. You see that with the the continued dialogue with her talking with her dad. Like I said, we'll go back to like the script. The script for panel 3 continues with Marcus saying, "What do you think about us having the two of us having something to do on these weekends? We haven't done anything in a while together. Maybe catch a movie or something like that." So we have that. And then we have like the 4th and 5th with some, bit of dialogue. Again, we're going to show what it looks like before, okay, and then after with the presented dialogue from the script, okay. So the good thing about what you're seeing right here, you're seeing clarity. You're seeing like the attempt to go from to left to right and everything, okay. Which brings me to like my next point here. Excuse me. We're going to talk about balloon placement guides the eye. Okay, so balloon placement guides the eye. So basically, what do we mean about balloon placement? For lettering and everything. Good balloon placement controls how a page is read. Basically, you're placing balloons. You place balloons in a natural reading order for the reader to gaze at. Top, left, bottom, right. Okay. Keep balloons within panel borders unless you intentionally want them to break out. Avoid covering important art whatever possible, because you don't want your art covered. I'm saying you don't want your balloons covering all the great artwork that your, the artist did. This was done by Dan Eakins. Shout out to him. He was one of my first artists who worked on the Theme of Thieves and everything. So you don't want the lettering covering the art, because you still want that to convey like some of the tell the story and everything. Balloons should complement, not complete. So if it just doesn't make any sense for you to cover your whole page or panels with balloons and basically hide the artwork and everything. Like I said, it's a complement, and it basically completes the whole page, once it's done properly. Use tail direction carefully so readers instantly know what's, who's actually speaking. And what you see with like the little pointy ends on the balloons, that's called the tail section, where the words are coming from the person's mouth, and you see like the guy going from the person's mouth to the actual balloon itself. Okay. The goal of this is basically the lettering helps keep the page flow, really smoothly without any type of confusion. So basically, you don't want any type of confusion with like the what you're basically seeing on page. So again, we have like the script. Okay. We have panel 6. Marcus talks about her, him and his daughter and everything. They're talking about trying to do something together. And Marcus is like, "You sure? Is there anything that you want to talk about?" Because Rebecca seems worried. That's the lead character. You don't say anything anymore. I know it's hard for you since he's been gone, but still at face she'll be, and then they start basically like an argument and everything. So they're going back and forth and stuff. So we see what that looks like on page 14, with no dialogue. Bam, with the dialogue here. So this is what we're seeing, like with the dialogue there. And the dad is basically just talking to to his daughter Rebecca and everything. And they're basically just going back and forth. So you got that page right there. Let's look at another page. It's basically let's just go to like the next page. So page 15 gives you profile shots of Rebecca on the left and Marcus on the right, as we talked about in the previous segment and everything from Script to Store. How to make good panel descriptions and everything, so you can know where all your characters are going to be placed and everything. So when you do the dialogue, the letterer can actually know where to put everything that is supposed to be. So Rebecca says, "Negative, Dad, whatever. You're still in denial. You need to let it go. Mom isn't coming back." And Marcus says, "I guess we'll have to keep a light lit for myself. Anyway, do you want to do something and everything?" All right. So this is basically page 15, and what it looks like here without the dialogue. We see like Rebecca pointing to her dad, in aggressive mode, basically, they're going back and forth with like the TV anchor in the background. And then bam, we see dialogue with everything from the script to like the dialogue that you see on the page. Again, we see negative at the first panel, whatever, Dad, you're still in denial. You need to let it go. Mom isn't coming back. Okay. And then, we get like the anchor and then the TV and all the, everything in the background. So basically, your background is basically complementing everything that's going on as far as what you're seeing on the page between the two figures and everything that's going back and forth, which is Rebecca and Marcus, which is, her dad. So we get like, a few more close-ups and everything. The citizen is on TV is basically talking. So, and we also get a male citizen and everything, and also the anchor. So let's look at that without the dialogue. Okay. Blank page without the dialogue. Okay. And then with the dialogue, bam. So we got like the dialogue with everything. Now, one thing I want to say for myself and everything, and it's not like this with my partner Marvin and Grant and some of our other Comicsburgh members and everything. I use like a lot of dialogue, okay, but I use it in a way to basically not do what I want to say. Not so overly subscribe like the scene and everything. I just use it to basically enhance. So once you get a chance to like read my comic and everything, you'll understand the context of where everything is coming from. But I don't want it to be too exposition place. So while you may see a lot of dialogue, it's basically a dialogue from the perspective of the the character itself, and the news scenes are basically a way of building out the universe, describing how the universe is going on. So the characters in like Marcus and Rebecca aren't reacting to the TV per se. It's just basically something on in the background, and the TV sort of like gives you a way of looking out of building out the universe and stuff. So this is basically what we're seeing. So again, without dialogue, with dialogue, bam. So it's a beautiful thing. And so it brings me to my last point of using all right, so hold on for a second here. So basically my last point of using style to enhance emotion and character. All right, so what do we mean by that? Using style to enhance emotion and character. All right, so lettering is a storytelling tool. Bold, italics, and enlarged words can emphasize tone, used sparingly, for impact. So different types of fonts, balloon shapes can also represent like robots, monsters, whispers, telepathy, rage, sound effects and stuff. Things that's going on in the background, things that's happening on the scene on the page and everything. Whisper balloons, you may have like little small letters and everything. Where what you're seeing right here is basically like a normal talking tone between the two. In some certain cases, you may have like a balloon that has like real small letters, which indicates like a whispering tone, between characters. You may have a jagged balloon or dripping effects that shows like it supports like a different type of tone that you want to set, with the character. Like if, say, for instance, Rebecca, if she wants to have like an icy tone, talking to her dad. And if I wanted to portray it in a way where she was basically being sarcastic or real cold to her dad, you may get like a tone where the balloon is sort of dripping ice, where it's basically conveying that okay, this is meant to tell the reader that the character is being real moody, real icy, and everything in her stance towards like the character that she's talking to. Basically, the goal of this is the lettering adds personality, emotional, and energy to the scene. What you're seeing not only with like the word balloons, you're also seeing the captions that come with like the thought captions that come with Rebecca's what you're seeing right there. So let's look at like the script again. So we see like we get a Rebecca thought caption on panel 3. So the Rebecca thought caption saying, basically saying he's so worried about me leaving soon. Sigh, I know what happened to mom still has him shook. And after all this time, it feels so bad. Sometimes he needs to let it go. Okay. So we go back to the third panel. We're not seeing anything, as far as that. And then we go back to, I'm sorry, that was the wrong page. we go back to this page, and we'll go back to this page, which is panel 3. And we see that he's so worried. The panel is colored in purple to sort of indicate with who the color code goes with as far as the character. So in this case, for this issue, all color coding with the panel thoughts are going with Rebecca. So you may have like a different color code for thought panels with other characters that are sort of like giving it like their inner monologue and everything. So like I said, this was a great way for to tell your scene and everything, and it's a good way for you to let the letterer know this is how you want it to be. So the way I do it, and Marvin and Grant, Manny, they'll tell you different ways that they do it and everything. But I send all my dialogue to the letterer. Basically, I don't really give them any type of directions. I just let them know, okay, this is what I want on a page. I'll let you stylize and put the thought balloons and everything, word balloons and everything to where you want it to be. And you see right here, you see like in these 2 pages, you see that there's spacing to where lettering can be put, in certain aspects and stuff. So what my artist does sometimes, they sort of like put lettering in places so they can have enough space to where they could put the main action of the panel for the character. So it leaves enough space for the letterer to eventually do their magic and everything and put it in. So with all these panels, you see there's enough spacing with like the top, maybe the side, maybe in the fourth panel here, you see like a spacing, a lot of spacing to like the left here. And then once you get to like the word balloons and stuff, they sort of fill up the page. And like I say, they don't dominate the page. They complement the page to make the page fill out and make it look better and a lot presentable to the reader. And in these fonts, you're seeing like the Comic Sans and everything. So I love using the Comic Sans font because it's basically traditional and it gives the reader a way to make my stuff look legitimate and professional and stuff. So every time I get, to a convention and stuff, people are looking at my comics and, complimenting on how good and polished it looks, how professional it looks. It doesn't look like something that was put together in your home, or on the side and everything. And like I said, I spend money to, hire these people to do, good work and everything. So, if you're paying somebody to do some good stuff, you expect the work to be good. And, it's a beautiful thing, Marvin said he's out here watching. All right, Marvin. He's out there watching, fighting a good fight and everything. Marvin, the Edge, he'll have his the Blain Kickstarter coming out again and everything. So we'll do tag a little bit of that before the end of this episode and stuff. But yeah, so we have like some really good ways for you to put yourself out there with your comic and everything, and to make sure that you really have good aspects of your comic presented with your lettering and everything. Okay, so the lettering is, like I said, basically like the finishing touches when you got your story all set, your script all set. You take it, you send it out to the artist so they could do their magic and all that stuff. A good artist will leave enough room for them to do their magic with their artwork and stuff, and leave enough space for the letterer to do their work as far as putting in like the word balloons and the thought captions and stuff. So you see that, and then you get the balloons to fill everything out, and you see how magically it just makes it look professional, makes it look like super really good and everything. So that's one of the biggest keys as far as like presenting your stuff at conventions or wherever you are, wanting to make sure it gets sold and stuff. Especially if you're trying to get into a comic shop, these retailers, they want to make sure that they got some good stuff in there. They don't got some in the basement type stuff, putting in their shop for people to buy. Like I said, the most important aspect is like your story, but the finishing touches is your lettering. So you got to make sure that you have some really good lettering to make sure that it sets everything off. It's like putting on a good pair of shoes if you're wearing a suit. So if you're wearing like a sparkly, really good, fit, suit and everything, you don't want to put on some dusty, dirty shoes. The ladies will talk about you to the end and everything. They may not talk about you to your face and everything, but they may talk about you to their other friends and everything. He looks so good, but look at his shoes. He doesn't really take care of himself. Look at his shoes. They're all dusty and dirty and scratchy and everything. So that's the same thing with your comic and everything. It may be presented all good. The artwork may be good. The story may be, excellent and everything, but you don't put, enough effort into the lettering and everything. It just sets everything off. And it's like that pair of shoes that's scratchy and dirty and everything, that makes it look like you don't really care enough to finish everything off and make it look all polished and stuff. So like I said, before, after, okay. And then, like I said, we got these scripts that go along with it. So this was for 14, page 14. This is for the before, the after, page 15, before, after. All right. So yeah. So basically, like I said, that caps off like the 3 tips, the 3 keys to perfect lettering in comics. We'll still have more to say on it. We got like, a bunch of different chapters that we're going to do from script to score as we go to like, to like the different levels of how to put your comic together. One preview I want to, get you, excuse me, let you guys know to get it out there, is that we'll actually be we'll be getting a retailer, a store owner here to talk about comics and stuff. So that's scheduled to be our next episode. So as of right now, the next episode is scheduled to be next week on the 19th, before we start like our holiday break and everything, and then we'll be back, the first of the year. So we'll do like one more episode before the year ends, and then we'll get back into it, come like New Year's and everything. Like I said, before we get out of here, I want to talk about like the Edge Kickstarter we got coming out soon. So make sure that you guys, check it out and follow. So here we go. Let me see. Let me share my screen right quick. All right, here we go. All right. The Edge. Here we go. There we go. Come on now. What are we doing? There we go. To the stage. To the stage. To the stage. Oh, we got to move some other media. With that. And that. There we go. Okay. Your boy DP finally got it together, right, Mark? Irad. All right. After the rain comes the thunder. The thunder. All right. So basically, this is the Edge Volume 3, God's Thunder. It collects issues 10 through 14. Okay. So make sure, Marvin has a ton of followers and everything. So make sure that you guys are on it, following like, the Kickstarter and everything. We're about to get that going on, as far as like, those issues and stuff. So there's a little bit of a preview as far as what's in the issues. So, we got like the artwork and everything. I mean, it's some crazy stuff going on, and he's presenting this without the lettering, folks. So imagine how polished and great this is going to look with like the lettering and everything. All right. So, that's basically your lesson today, how that lettering, comes out. All right. And then I believe he also has another, Kickstarter in here that I want. Oh, there we go. We got like the Blain action figure. All right. So, this is basically a redo from the Kickstarter we had it going on a couple months ago. We're restarting, redoing it again, getting it back out there. So this will be debuting. Both Kickstarters are going to be debuting next year. I believe the God's Thunder is going to be in January. I believe the Blain one is going to be sometime early spring and everything. So just check that out. Make sure that you guys are going on Kickstarter to follow. Tell all your friends, tell all your family and all that stuff. Tell people that you don't know if they like toys or action figures. And they're into like, collectibles, doing like G.I. Joe stuff and everything. They're definitely going to enjoy this. So the Edge, that's coming along soon and everything. So you guys are definitely going to enjoy that once you see that and everything. So as I said, I hope you guys learned something today on everything that we got going on. Like I said, make sure that you guys are going to like our website, comicsburgh.com. Okay. So you get all our, products and everything that we have Comicsburgh related. We got some good stuff going on. Make sure that you send us some feedback too. So if you like everything that you heard today, send us some feedback. If you have some questions on, how to build your comic out and everything, on, how to put your stuff out, we got you covered. So send us some feedback at info@comicsburgh.com. Make sure that you're listening to our podcast and everything, so subscribing to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, podcasts. We're going to be on other podcasts too, like I said, iHeartRadio and other stuff. Like I said, make sure that you check out that Edge Volume 3, God's Thunder, that's coming out soon. And also make sure that you do check out my stuff, the Theme of Thieves. All right. So basically, this is my comic. So it'll be on the Comicsburgh website soon. Okay, so it's basically going to be debuting on the 21st. As far as pre-orders. And I thanks to everybody who basically supported my Kickstarter for the Theme of Thieves. I definitely appreciate you as far as that. And like I said, basically check us out. Comicsburgh is a indie comic, a publisher and everything, trying to get our stuff out into the world and stuff. So I think you guys are definitely going to enjoy what you got from us. Comicsburgh is all over. Comicsburgh is in all your on all your stores and everything. So if your comic store doesn't have us, make sure that you go to your comic store, retailer, and ask them, let me get some Comicsburgh stuff in there. Let me get some Theme of Thieves, the Edge, Beowulf, anything Comicsburgh related. Ask them why they don't have it in their stores. All right. All right. So make sure that you guys, like I said, are going to comicsburgh.com. Appreciate you. And I'll see you when I see you next week. All right.